What year did I become homecoming queen? 63.
I'm supposed to answer.
But you weren't homecoming queen.
No.
This is too hard for me, honey.
How are you doing, Toto?
Oh, I'm good.
Are you so excited to be here?
So excited.
Do you love the traffic?
I can't get enough traffic.
Did you come here last time you did the podcast, or was it by Zoom?
I don't remember.
Seriously?
No.
You did it with Sarah Jessica Parker around in Just Like That.
Well, that was years ago, honey.
Like 2.
Yeah. 2 years ago. I don't think we came here. I couldn't say.
You did come, but she was on Zoom.
Oh, SJP was on Zoom. You were here.
Well.
And you loved it.
I loved it?
Well, no, clearly not. This is our Mother's Day episode.
Okay.
And it's all about what we learn from our mothers. And you are turning 80.
Oh, God, honey.
The day after Mother's Day. What do you mean, oh, God, honey? You just gave 2 interviews about it. AARP and People. That was your news peg. And you told AARP turning 80 isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, but it's still 80.
Well, why is it not what it used to be?
Well, because we've extended these deadlines. I mean, turning 40, we extended to 60, and 60, we extended to 80. And so we've given life extensions and life to these major birthdays that used to me. I mean, really, when I was in school, turning 30 was like the end of your life.
Really?
Yes.
Because why? You were done childbearing?
I don't know. There was no reason. I was like in 7th or 8th grade, but it was like, oh, she's 30. She's almost dead.
I observed the Greta Gerwig interview with Anna and Meryl. Greta was saying that she finds it very impressive that Meryl and Anna are still women in the full of their power, even though they're past childbearing age, because historically, women's power was only about their ability to have children. And once they passed that zone,
we were no longer of use.
Exactly. Do you feel powerful?
I feel like I'm grateful for the extension.
How old was Franu when she died?
84.
She was an old 80.
I mean, she looked great, but she was old.
Franu is what I called my grandmother, Toto's mother. And Toto is what my children call Candice.
I love it.
One day when Artie was about 18 months old, he said, Toto, and it stuck. What are you doing for your birthday, which is the day before Mother's Day?
I don't know. I was relying on you to come up with something.
You don't know what you're doing?
Well, I'm having a party the day before.
So you do know.
Well, the day before, but not my actual birthday.
Okay, well, what are you doing for your general birthday?
My general birthday, I'm having 50 people to a club. And
well, not a nightclub.
No, a dinner club. And they're 50 people that I'm close to. You'll make a speech.
It's a really relaxing, easy week for me. I won't be tired at all after not sleeping Monday and Tuesday.
True.
Yes, Candice's birthday and Mother's Day are always right after the Met Gala, so it's really fun. And then Artie's birthday is the next week.
Yeah.
So we're working on CB80 and Artie 6.
Yes. And we can combine me with Artie and push it a week.
Ken, are you crazy? We've had this booked for months.
Okay.
Also, he's having a bounce house.
Oh.
I mean, these are different parties, is just my point.
I could be in a bounce house.
Okay. What is your dream Mother's Day?
Frankly, just being in the country with you and my grandkids is...
I was trying to think, what have we done historically on Mother's Day? Not much, except go out to a meal.
Well, you've done a lot for me by having kids. I never would have asked you to have kids, but I was so grateful that you did.
You always say this. I never asked. And yet...
I made up for it.
What did you do with Franu growing up for Mother's Day? Was Mother's Day a thing when you were little, or was it a Hallmark holiday?
It was a Hallmark holiday.
So there was no celebrating?
No, I mean, you would do a card, you'll do flowers, a dinner. I mean, a dinner in the dining room.
Last time you were on the podcast, it was with Sarah Jessica Parker to talk about playing Enid Frick reprised. Enid Frick was a Vogue editor on Sex and the City, both the series and the movie, and people on the internet were very quick to point out Enid's role was similar to my new role at Vogue. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's true.
What could Enid teach us?
How to dress, basically, but you're doing so well. Enid was really fun to play, and she was a little frosty and aloof, so you don't have that at all, thank God.
Your first Vogue cover was in 1967. You had a big bouffant, and it was called The American Woman, shot by Bert Stern. Do you remember anything about that shoot?
I had like 40 hairpieces.
Did you leave wearing the hairpieces and walk around with them in? Or
No.
you had them taken all out?
I had them all taken out.
I sort of like when people leave shoots with their hair in from
But
the
it's
shoot.
not theirs.
Oh, that's true, because they're expensive.
Yeah, and you can't just walk out with it.
With thousands of dollars worth of blonde
thousands
hair.
of dollars of hair.
You're so conscientious.
I am conscientious. I remember I liked Bert Stern a lot. He had a great sense of humor. He was very smart and fun to work with. I remember we went to a club afterward with him. We met his wife. And
What club?
I don't know, a club.
Like Studio 54? Like the Cosmopolitan
no,
Club?
there was a club called The Club, and it was a small place over on the east side, and it was very intimate and it was fun.
Actually, I went Studio 54 last night for Rocky Horror.
Really?
With Sam Cochran, and we were marveling how close it is to 222. Did you used to go to Studio 54 a lot?
Absolutely not.
Never?
Once.
Once?
Yeah.
With who?
I don't even know. I went with a group of people. I was overwhelmed.
You don't remember anything else?
I just remember there was so much going on. Bianca was there.
Jagger.
Yeah, Jagger.
On a horse?
No, she was not on a horse that night, but there might have been a horse there, unattached to Bianca. But, I mean, there was just so much happening that it was clearly a place I didn't belong.
Why?
I was just overwhelmed.
But you did go to The Club with Bert Stern. Do you remember other times shooting for Vogue?
Yeah, I remember with Avedon shooting a few times. I love Dick Avedon.
Always in studio or ever on location?
With Avedon, always in studio.
Who's the photographer who you've been most inspired by the way they work?
My friend Mary Ellen Mark, who is no longer with us, but who was a great photojournalist. I met her in college. She was a few years older than I was, but she was already a photographer and a very good one, and was very generous with what she'd learned and taught me how to print.
Did she inspire you to become a photojournalist?
Yes, but at the time, photojournalism was getting a cachet, a sort of energy to it, and it was being discovered, and photojournalists were being discovered. So it was kind of like a new medium.
Because then you started working. Did you ever work for one magazine completely, or you were taking assignments for different magazines?
No, I just took freelance assignment.
Well, we were just talking about when you shot for Home Journal with Jane Goodall,
Right.
who died last year. You stayed with her for a week,
Yeah.
right? Or longer than that?
10 days.
In Tanzania on,
Lake Gombe.
what were your living accommodations?
They were very simple. I lived in the guest hut, and Jane lived in another hut further down the beach. We were both on the beach of the lake, Lake Tanganyika, actually. And I just had a hut. There was no sink. It was a window and four walls and a door with a heavy screen because in the morning I had a couple of bananas on my nightstand for dinner. And the baboons would come in the morning and rattle the door to get to the bananas.
Because they could smell the bananas, or they could see them?
Yes, because they could smell the bananas.
Wow.
And they wanted them. So I threw the bananas. I opened the door a crack and I threw the bananas down the beach. And then when they ran to get the bananas, I escaped and I ran in the opposite direction to the camp.
So you didn't get your bananas?
No, I didn't. But I got other bananas because we had a lot of bananas. That's what we ate.
And what was the daily routine like for Jane?
Well, she would follow the chimps.
And baboons or just chimps?
No, she was not a bab person. In order for Jane to get funding for her research station, which she needed to fund, she had to agree with Stanford to accept a certain small amount of students who were studying that kind of biology, animal biology. And some of the students were BAB students. It was not considered these.
That was the lesser.
It was a lesser group. It was like sort of, you didn't want to belong to the BAB group, even though the BABs were more interesting because they were lively and they moved around.
They were livelier than chimpanzees?
Oh, yeah. Chimpanzees would sit for hours and groom. They would pick fleas off each other and eat them like Ritz crackers. So that it was much more lazy and relaxing to be a chimp person, even though they were at the top of the heap.
So Jane Goodall was a chimp person, and she would only do chimps, but the other Stanford students that she liked less were the BAB people.
I don't know that she chose the people to go in those groups. And I don't think she would have expressed favoritism in that way. But yes, there was a definite sort of, we look down on the BAB people.
Well, I was interested in reading the article because you talk about how Jane borrowed parenting techniques from the baboons and the chimpanzees. What were those?
Well, for instance, she had her son Grublin, I think his full name was, and he grew up on Lake Tanganyika, and he didn't have any other kids there, so he would play often with chimps and babs, and he would branch wave, which is a classic sort of chimp courtship. And so I would see Grub sort of branch waving at a chimp down the beach.
Where's Grub now?
Well, he's probably 50.
Did that give you any insight into parenting?
No. You've got guts.
Were you ever regretful that you stopped doing photojournalism?
You know, I wasn't good enough to keep doing it and to do it at the level I wanted to do it. But I loved when I was doing it, and I worked for the Today Show, which I loved because I would do a different piece every week. I did the Ku Klux Klan and Muhammad Ali, who was really interesting and fun to do. I did sort of who I wanted, which was great.
And you're supposed to be doing a book of your photos.
Am I?
How's that going? It was due during COVID.
Yeah. I was just looking at the pages today and thinking,
oh, God.
I better get moving on this.
That poor editor.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful it's not me.
I know. Me too.
And you know what else I just realized? That you were on the cover of Playboy when I was 4.
Chloe, I was on the cover of Playboy, fully dressed. I was in like a tuxedo.
I know, they were known for their articles at the time.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I didn't register that as a 4-year-old.
It's nothing I would have volunteered. But
well, but in it, I was very amused that in the interview, you talked about how much you respect Diane Sawyer, and that she was someone that you really looked up to as a woman working in journalism. And now she's one of your closest friends.
Yeah.
So you could show her that. Centerfold. Do you remember other women at that time that you looked up to as women whose careers you wanted to emulate?
I remember Katie Couric was someone who was very appealing and very smart and started her own company, and it ran like clockwork.
And also in that interview, which I'd never heard before, you said that Edgar, your father, used to say all beautiful women he knew were unhappy.
He said more than that. He said it's the beautiful women that get in trouble and who are unhappy. And he said, I want you to always focus on your other interests. I ultimately did.
Interesting. Are there any memoirs of people you know that you love or that you've been excited to read recently? Are you going to read Liza Minnelli's memoir?
Read it.
You did?
Yeah. I've known Liza since I was 7, so I read it right away.
Vincent Minnelli, Liza's father, who is a wonderful director, used to have miniature versions of all the costumes for his movies made for Liza to dress up in with her friends.
Yes.
Which now, when I see these sort of polyester belle dresses that Alice gets.
That's not what Liza had.
This was this Edith Head, what
Really?
roll in her grave.
They were Edith Head miniatures.
Oh my God. So what would you dress up as? Which characters?
Well, honey,
you can do it.
No, I can't. I can't. I don't know. Someone from Gone with the Wind or...
He didn't direct Gone with the Wind?
He didn't have to.
Okay.
He could just pick things out of movies.
Was Liza one of the people that you would go to the Beverly Hills coffee shop with?
No.
Okay.
I went with Roxy Johnson.
Okay.
Her father was Nunnally Johnson, who wrote The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. He was a writer.
I don't know what that is.
It was a great movie, a great classic at the time. And he was a writer-director. Very educated, interesting, funny guy. And Roxy, I haven't seen for 100 years, but she...
But you used to walk or bike down to the Beverly Hills Hotel with your dogs, which sounds so dangerous.
Beverly Hills was different then. There wasn't the sort of crush of cars.
Was that when you were riding your horse down Sunset, or that was Edgar?
No, that was Edgar.
You're not that old. But that's amazing that Sunset Boulevard, you could ride horses.
He would ride down Sunset and he would ride down Rodeo, which has a lovely divider, or had. And he would ride down Sunset to the beach.
Wow.
Well, L.A. in the old days, in the 30s and 40s, was a different place.
Everyone has been talking about JFK Jr. on Murphy Brown.
That soundstage, when he did the Murphy Brown, he did it to promote George, which was his magazine that was then had the first issue coming out. You couldn't get in the stage because the women from all over the Warner Brothers lot were clogging the doorways. It was like...
And was he very charming?
He was so charming and so modest and so handsome. God, he was handsome.
What was his role on Murphy Brown?
He played my assistant for a quick minute.
Which was one of the running
Yes, which was
jokes.
One of the running gags.
We just went to the SNL taping where you inducted Jack Black into the Five Timers Club. People who have hosted Saturday Night Live 5 times. And you and Tina Fey are, as Lorne Michaels says, local hires. So whenever he needs someone inducted, you're his first port of call. But you were the first woman to host SNL, which at the time I'm sure you didn't feel like as big a deal because it had just started.
I did the 3rd show.
Wow. What did people think of it back then?
It took a while for the show to be discovered. I think Paul Simon hosted the first show, which was a Thanksgiving show, and he was dressed as a turkey and sang Still Crazy After All These Years, which I thought was brilliant. Then I did the 3rd show. And of course, it was the purest terror. Lorne said I looked like Patty Hearst when she opened the door to the SLA. It was like, gah!
Who was on the cast then, the first cast?
Gilda Radner, John Belushi, Chevy Chase, Danny Aykroyd.
Do you remember any of your first sketches?
No, honey.
Yes, you do, like the bee in Rock Center.
Yes, I do remember the bees.
Okay.
That was maybe the second show I did, yes.
Okay.
Well, we did a sketch where I was dressed as Sonia Henney in a sort of red velvet with feathers on the bottom and ice skates, and we did a bee-capades, and the other cast members were dressed as bees, of course, and we just skated around flailing because none of us could really skate, but there was the ice rink right below the studio, so we used it. Lorne used it.
And then you dressed me as a bee as one of my first Halloween costumes in a full arc.
That's right.
I had amazing Halloween costumes.
You did?
The costume designer for Murphy Brown
Yes.
would make my Halloween costumes.
I remember.
She made me a great Lucille Ball costume
I remember
once.
that.
My poor friend Shane had to be Ethel.
She was really a good sport. It didn't do her any favors.
Well, she was 7. My Halloween costumes were very high value.
They were.
If she didn't make it herself, she would take me to the Warner Brothers costume stage and look for tiny versions of things. I loved going to the Murphy set when I was little.
You thought it was an office.
Yeah, and I would explore sort of all the dark tunnels and things.
And you'd climb up the ladders, you'd be on the rig. Oh, it was insane that I let you do that.
And Lois would come, which
Yes.
is insane that you also did that. Lois was our dog.
Yes, our great dog.
Well, I know, but I just, on a soundstage, I don't know that most soundstages let people bring their dogs.
No, but we were a very successful show, and Warner Brothers was resting on our laurels at the moment.
Okay.
So I took full advantage.
It was a nice family that Murphy had.
Yes, lovely.
And you were a great leader of that, but also other people really led that in a lovely way. And you're still in touch with so many of those people.
I'm still close friends with Diane English, who created and wrote Murphy Brown. She wrote the first 4 years, and I'll see her next week in L.A. I love Faithy Ford, and I love Joe Regal Buto, but I haven't seen him in Grant Shaw. I love, and he's sort of in some place in the depths of Pennsylvania. But
Says someone who's never been to Pennsylvania.
I went to school there.
Oh, that's true. Briefly. Did you feel like you were always sort of leading on a set you were on? I asked this because when I recently interviewed Meryl with Anna, Greta Gerwig said that Meryl is always such a great leader on sets. And she said, I try to be, except when I did a movie with Candice, she and Diane Wiest ganged up on me.
You know, it was time.
And she said it was like wrestling and I loved it. She said, oh, Candy. You're just sort of leaning in when you're on set.
Well, sometimes.
On Shrinking, which you were just on briefly, who was the leader of the Shrinking set?
It was a fairly equitable set. I mean, it was Harrison Ford, it was Jason Segel, and they were lovely. It was a lovely set to work on. Krista Miller.
Who we knew way back when because she used to date Grant Shaw when they were both kids. So that was very fun to sort of rediscover her later in life. What were your non-negotiables with Warner Brothers about when you would be available to do parenting stuff?
Say what?
Like, I now am always figuring out how much I'm going to say no to things at work. I'm going to take the kids to school, but it means I'm going to get in at 9:30, which is late. I'm going to leave at 5:30 so I can be home by 6. But then I do feel like then I have to get back online at 8 p.m. when the kids go to bed. But there are certain things that I feel like are my non-negotiables that I want to be there for.
I would be there every morning at 9:30 after I took you to school.
You always drove carpool.
Yes. And then I would be home by 5:30. Maybe 6, except for Thursday and Friday nights.
Friday nights were very late.
Yes, because we shot the show that night.
You would get home at like 2 or later, right?
I know. And you'd be up sometimes, and we'd watch TV movies. And
at 2 a.m.?
No, at like midnight.
Well, I always loved that you would have either my fake Aunt Bee or my uncle, who I called Zoo, stay over, and then I would make French toast with Bee in the morning, and then you would sort of come out after you'd, been up all night, basically. Were there any things that you wish you'd done differently, or any times that you had to sort of push back on the studio or the show about when you could be available?
There were physical demands of the show that you couldn't change. I mean, you had to shoot a play a week, but they bent over backwards to accommodate my schedule, and they would come with schedules, and they would say, okay, so this is when you can get there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, you're home by this and this, and then we would have dinner at Orso's on the weekend.
That's true.
Which was lovely.
We were just talking about that with Artie, because I would always have a Polly Pocket, and now he has like a Ninja Turtle Polly Pocket he's very proud of. Are there any parenting decisions you regret?
No. It was certainly demanding to do a show and be the kind of present parent that I wanted to be. But look at you. And I felt that I was present in ways that mattered and on a continuous basis.
I always remember you also saying about Poppy, my father, that when he was present, he was not often present, but when he was really in it. Like if he was building a sandcastle, he was on his knees building a sandcastle, whereas you had other friends who, if they were with their kids, they were also on the phone, and they were also, talking to someone else. And I always felt with you that you were fully there with me and never frustrated or impatient about that, but always very grateful to be present. And I try to remember that because I'm often frustrated with my children. But I also try to have my phone in a different room for an hour of bedtime. But it's hard. And I do feel like it's this moment in my life that's so full, and I'm so grateful for it. But I'm just exhausted all the time. And I feel like you...
Yeah, you are.
And you got sick whenever the show ended.
Yeah. because I would save it up.
Which I think happens to a lot of people. But I mean, the show would end usually like the night before my spring break. And then we would leave. And because you didn't think there was enough culture in LA, we would go.
Well, there wasn't.
To Moscow. And you'd be like hacking up phlegm.
Must you?
Well, I mean, you'd be quite sick in a tour of the Kremlin. It took its toll on you.
I know, and I apologize, but
no, I mean that it's hard that we could have just gone to Hawaii, but you stuck it out.
Why go to Hawaii when you could fly LA to Moscow?
Also, in this AARP interview, you talked about how you have a third memoir coming out, which I wasn't aware of.
I don't. Well, I have supposedly a photography book coming out.
Well, no, that I'm aware of. But according to AARP, you're also working on a book about aging and turning 80, which is news to me.
And me too.
Oh, God. So what's going to be in this book?
Well, I don't know, honey, because I haven't even thought about it. I just talked about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your favorite part about being a grandparent?
That was your biggest gift. I just love those two kids. I love them to death, and they are so different one from another and so filled with life and love. Alice especially is filled with love. And
Artie's filled with prickly
with
barbs.
Explosives. I love getting to re-experience the joys of all that.
Do you think parenting is different now than it was when I was little? Do you think people are stricter now, or there's more going on, or has the philosophy around raising kids changed dramatically?
I think that it sort of veered away from the strictness, and now it's come back to it because...
Were you very strict?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't really remember that.
You complained about it.
Huh. Remember any examples?
No, I just remember that you would say, other parents don't do that. Other parents don't make their kids come home that early. And I said, well, that's what you're stuck with.
Lovely. We went to Disneyland this Christmas.
We did.
Which was very exciting. And you announced that it was your last time that you were going to Disneyland.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell me about your first time going to Disneyland?
Well, Uncle Walt was there. I went to the opening of Disneyland with my parents.
When you were how old?
Maybe 10, 11.
I think we looked it up and it was 56, so you must have been 10.
And I remember what I was wearing. And
that you remember, but you don't know you're writing a book?
The distant memories are the ones that stay. Honey.
Okay, so what did you wear when you were 10 years old to the opening of Disneyland?
I wore a crisp red Oxford cloth shirt with suspenders stitched on. I loved it.
Okay.
Jeans or slacks. Would have been slacks with my mother there.
Do you have a first fashion memory?
I remember modeling when I was 15 or 16. I started to earn my own money and putting on what seemed like grown-up clothes, women's suits and stockings, and thinking, ooh, what a lot of trouble.
But you liked it.
Well, it was interesting the first few times, and then it faded.
I think when I was like 15 and saw Almost Famous, and I said, were you a hippie? And you said, I was a well-dressed hippie.
Yes, I was.
What does that mean?
It means that I gave it some thought, and that the beads were nice ones, and the blouses were silk, and
Well, this weekend, Artie's very focused on dungeons and people being locked up. And so you were telling Artie about the time you got arrested. Would you like to share with our listeners?
Oh, God. I was arrested a group of us were arrested for obstructing the Senate corridor by lying down was, I believe, the charge.
What were you wearing then?
I was wearing pants and a blouse. And
was it an organized group?
Yeah. It was an organized
What group?
I don't remember, honey. And then we were put in a paddy wagon and taken to jail and booked.
But no handcuffs or zip tie?
No, I don't think there were handcuffs. I would have remembered that. But then we were in a jail cell
in D.C.?
In Washington, D.C. for longer than I would have thought.
With any other people in jail or just you and the group you came in with?
Well, there were other people in jail, but we were in one cell.
Anyone you met or hung out with?
Terry Garr was one of them.
Really?
Yes.
She was in your group?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
The prison matron who was telling us to be quiet, and she said, "Who does your hair?"
No.
Yes.
To you or Terry?
Terry said that to the prison matron.
Oh my God. That is so funny. And what did the prison matron say?
She just gave her a look.
Was that your only time in prison?
Yes, it was.
Have you ever gotten a parking ticket? Or, sorry, a driving ticket?
Yeah.
For what?
It's probably speeding on Santa Monica.
Well, I ask because you're a very fast driver.
Yeah, it was for speeding.
Well, and once when I was learning to drive, my uncle was teaching me, and I rolled through a stop sign. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, the stop sign is just a suggestion." It's what Mama says. And he was horrified. I don't think I'd ever had you stop at a stop sign.
I took certain liberties, but I would never do that now.
Sure.
I would never drive now.
How did you make certain decisions about how much I was going to be exposed to your work and celebrity? Because recently the Scandinavian actress Renate Reinsve was on the podcast, and she was talking about not taking her child to premieres, even though they wanted to go. And you always were very strict that I was not allowed to ever do that with you. And other people were, and I felt very excluded. But do you feel that was the right decision?
I did. Yes, I did. And I stand behind it.
I do remember you took me to the premiere of Oliver and Company, the animated Disney movie, when I was like 4. And that was very exciting.
That was fun.
We just had Alice's 4th unicorn birthday at our apartment.
I know.
You threw me amazing birthday parties. Do you remember some of the parties you threw?
Some of them I do.
You rented a theater at Disney.
Yeah.
For my 5th birthday and played
Snow
White, which actually is a terrifying movie for 5-year-olds.
I know. It was a terrible idea.
There was a game that Andy Cohen plays on his show. Have you ever met this person? He was sort of holding up different people and you were doing it. And it made us think about some of the great American designers. I want to know if you remember the first time you wore an Oscar de la Renta dress and met Oscar.
Well, I'd known Oscar socially and had dinner at his and Francois's house. So I knew him, and he was the most charming, the most lovely.
What about Ralph Lauren?
I mean, I've known him since he made ties. I knew
You
him.
knew him as Ralph Lipschitz?
No, I knew him as Ralph Lauren, but he was in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And I was working in Chicago.
What were you doing in Chicago?
I don't know, a movie. And I met him, and then he branched out, needless
He really
to say.
branched out.
Into everything.
And you wore a lot of Ralph Lauren for a long time. You still do.
I love his stuff.
Did you ever meet Irving Penn?
Yes, it was not a success.
In what way?
I was booked to be photographed by Irving Penn, and he said, I can't work with her. And he released me.
Wow.
It was
what was it for?
I think it was for Vogue. I don't remember. It was.
Oh my God.
And he said, she's not giving me anything.
What did you say? Did you just slink out?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was not, you didn't say anything. You just went.
Were you bruised to the core?
No, but I remembered.
When did you meet Gianni Versace?
I met him at a club in New York. I don't remember which club.
All these clubs?
Yeah, there were at the time a lot of clubs. He contacted me. He sent me flowers to your apartment and asked me if I wanted to meet them for dinner. So I did. And he was lovely. And
where'd you go to dinner?
A club.
Well, and then he sent a Christmas cactus to you when I was born as a birth gift.
Yes.
Which lasted like 30 years.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
When did you first meet Giorgio Armani?
I don't think I ever did.
Interesting. But you wore his clothes a lot.
Yeah.
What about Donna Karan?
I wore a lot of Donna on Murphy and thought it was very flattering. I loved her suits and her dresses
and Bill Blass. Well, that great print.
The leopard with
Did you know him?
A little bit.
What about Hubert de Givenchy?
I don't think I ever met Hubert.
What about Valentino?
No. Well, I met him, but I didn't know him.
Okay, you're gonna hate this, but you're gonna be strong.
Oh boy, what's coming?
We're playing a game of a newlyweds game. how well we know each other.
Oh, man.
We're just going to do it so fast, and then you're going to be so grumpy that we're going to stop. All right. What was my first job?
Your first job?
Yes. This is going to go so poorly.
Was it in New York?
No.
Was it on the set?
No.
What was it?
It was probably waitressing in Paris when I was living there.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
In your red suede boots.
Yeah, I loved those boots.
Yep.
Okay, what's your first question?
Who do I think is the funniest comedian?
Well, I'm going to guess right now you think Gene Smart is a great comedian.
Yes, I do. I love Gene Smart.
And you were very impressed by Jack Black. You thought he was a great comedian.
Yeah, and I liked him. He was fun on the show.
What is my favorite movie to watch with Artie and Alice?
I don't know.
What's your favorite movie to watch with Artie and Alice then?
We watch cartoons. We watch
You watch a lot of Tom and Jerry.
a lot of Tom and Jerry, but there's not one dominant Tom and Jerry.
So true. All right, what's your next question?
How many times have I been on the cover of Vogue? Next.
All right, what's the next question?
What year did I become homecoming queen? 63.
I'm supposed to answer. I'm supposed to see whatever. Keep going.
But you weren't homecoming queen.
No.
This is too hard for me, honey.
What is my favorite gift that you've ever given me?
A piece of jewelry.
Well, so many things. You're such a wonderful jewelry fairy, but I do love the bracelet that I have to get fixed that you got me for my 21st birthday with all of my nicknames engraved in it, the Aurora Lopez one. What is my favorite vacation that we've been on together?
Russia?
I did love Russia. Good job. All right, what's the next one you have?
What was my favorite book I read as a child?
I have no idea.
Treasure Island.
Oh, really? Interesting. Artie would probably like that.
Yeah, he would. He would love it.
What is one stop I have to always go to when I'm in Paris?
The hot chocolate place?
Angelina? That's when I was 10.
Well,
No.
where do you like to go?
I love to go to the Dries Van Noten store. I love to go to Justine's apartment. I love to go to the souffle place that the Zilkas took us to.
Yeah.
I love to go to the Grande Épicerie at the Bon Marché. I love to get kids' clothes at Monoprix. What's my favorite restaurant in New York?
Not Gabriel's.
I like Gabriel's, but that's sort of your favorite restaurant.
Yes.
I love going to Brooklyn Diner with the kids. I love the Odeon. I love Cafe Luxembourg. I love Barney Greengrass.
I've never been to any of those with you, so I don't know.
You don't like to go below 59th Street.
Yes, to go with you, I do.
Thank you, Toto, for coming on the pod, and happy Mother's Day.
Toto.
I'm not Toto.
I thought we were both Toto.
I'm not Toto. It's the grandparent name.
Okay. Thank you, Bunny.